All right, let's talk about strength training. And this is just a general overview, going over a few principles and application and tips when it comes to strength training that I've learned from my experience lifting weights, but also from my experience working with other people. And I will say, regardless of your fitness level and where you are at on your journey, this information is applicable. So you could be an experienced lifter and hopefully this reinforces ideas that you are already following, or you could be somebody that is just getting started on your fitness journey and this is a great foundation to work off of. What strength training is and what it is not. I like to view strength training as a specific method of exercise the same way that I would view running as a specific method of exercise. Kind of in a fancier realm, strength training is producing force against a resistance. It's kind of cool. It's this neuromuscular connection where our brain is sending a signal to our body to overcome a resistance, and over time, that signal gets better and we get stronger. Now, kind of in my eyes, strength training is a progressive intentional overload. And that's what differs it from other forms of exercise, and even more specifically, from other forms of resistance training. So it is not yoga. Strength training is not Pilates, and it is not high intensity interval training. And there's nothing wrong with those forms of exercise. Those are great forms of exercise that have their own benefits. But the more that we are able to view strength training under this lens of a specific method with a specific purpose, the more intentional it becomes and the more that we're able to get out of it. What are the benefits of strength training? Like, why are we doing this? It's hard. We're investing time into it. We're investing money into it. This is just a reminder of why. From my eyes, the way that I view it, strength training is the number one form of exercise that you can do. If you just had to pick one form of exercise, strength training checks more boxes. It's more efficient. It kind of is the overarching theme to every fitness program and plan. So muscle and strength are obvious, and when it comes to longevity and independence as you age, that's probably the biggest one, is maintaining and improving your muscle and your strength. Body composition, that kind of goes with metabolism. Those two are both benefits of a strength training program. Coordination, I think that is an underrated benefit. You don't realize it, but after a few months of strength training, you become more body aware. You move better in space. You step off the curb and you catch yourself. You're more confident in your movement. Same thing with your connective tissue strength. You're overloading your muscles and your body. That also overloads your ligaments and your tendons and your joints, and it prevents injury. It boosts your mood, right? I think we've all felt the feeling after a nice, tough strength training session. You can just kind of feel elevated. Bone density, that's definitely the one that you hear the most floating around online, and also hormone regulation. So again, strength training is the specific form of exercise, and it's tough and it takes time, but there are many, many benefits to doing so. This is something else that I kind of wanted to cover when it comes to just creating a better understanding of what we are doing, and it's the principle of specificity. So kind of that textbook definition of it is a principle stating that the body will adapt to the specific demands that are placed on it. A good example is if you ran a mile for a month. Over the course of that month, your body would adapt to that demand, and by the end of the month, you would get better at running a mile. You look at muscular endurance. If you do a bunch of lightweight and super high reps, 30, 40 reps of an exercise, over the course of time, your body will adapt to that and your muscular endurance will improve. Well, compare that to muscular strength. If you lift a super heavy weight, in the 5 to 6 rep range, and over time you do that over and over again, your body will adapt and you'll improve your strength. Why are we talking about this? Because this goes back to being intentional with what you were doing. You should kind of be able to know why you were doing an exercise, or what rep range you're falling into, or what's the purpose behind the plan that you were following, so that you can know what to expect and you can get better at it and you can progress it. So that's where the principle of specificity falls into place when it comes to strength training. Again, our body will adapt to the demands that we place on it. So here's just some general applications when it comes to strength training. And if you're just starting, you have to build the stability and the endurance and the skill and the execution of the exercise and of the plan and of the technique when it comes to strength training. And you could be someone that has lifted for a while and then you took time off and then you need to revisit that phase. Get an understanding for what you're doing. And this could be 2 to 4 weeks. It could be 2 to 4 months. It kind of just depends on the person and the situation and the exercise history. But before anything else, you got to get the stability, endurance, execution, and skill of strength training first. And then you identify the intensity. And this is where we really get into kind of what strength training is all about, is what weight and what reps brings you close to that high level of intensity. And when I say intensity, I don't mean hot and sweaty. I mean bringing your muscles close to failure. Like you are pushing so hard, but that bar is moving so slow and you barely get one more rep in. That's the type of intensity that I'm talking about. And that is a skill, and that takes time to identify and develop that. You couldn't just go walk into the gym and know exactly how much weight and how many reps on a squat it's going to take to get to that type of intensity. You develop it over time and be okay with that. I've talked about reps in reserve before, but just a reminder on that, that is a subjective way of saying how challenging, how intense a set was. If you have 5 to 10 reps in reserve at the end of a set, you could have done 5 to 10 more reps when you were done with that set. That's a relatively easy set. It's not super intense. If you had 1, maybe 2, meaning you got done with that bench press and you're like, dang, I could have done maybe 1 more rep, that's going to be a pretty challenging set. As you can imagine, more is not always more. So just doing a bunch of sets to failure is not necessarily the best thing for you. So I've kind of identified and defined this golden zone when it comes to getting the most out of your strength training and being effective with it. And that is 1 to 2 sets of 1 to 2 reps in reserve type of intensity per muscle group per week. You do a set of squats, your last set, you could have done 1 or 2 more reps. Well, there's 1 set for your quads. You come back on Thursday and now you're doing leg extensions. And on your final set, you do a really tough set where you could have done 1 to 2 more reps maybe. Well, there's 2 sets now for your quads. And that right there is the beauty of full body training. Okay, so we built the stability and the endurance and the execution and the skill, and then we've identified the intensity. Well, now we get to the nitty gritty, and that's overloading over time, meaning adding more weight, adding more repetitions over the course of time. And this is unfortunately not a linear process, as you probably know. You know, there's going to be some up and downs, and that's okay. There's going to be times when you're feeling really good, and those could be a couple weeks even, and you're really on top of it, and you're at the peak of your game, and then there can be a few weeks where you're just kind of getting through it. So understanding that and committing to that type of process kind of allows you to take that next step in your strength training journey. The bottom line though, at the end of the day, we got to give your muscles a reason to adapt. So we're kind of creating this combination of intensity, working close to failure, rest in between sets and in between sessions, overloading over time with more sets or more reps of a certain weight or more weight, and then just repeating that process again and again and again. So things that matter are the exercises that you are doing. So select exercises that you enjoy somewhat, right, relatively. You have access to, you have the equipment in order to do them, and you can rely on. Meaning you can take them close to muscular fatigue, muscular failure. You know that it's a safe exercise. You're comfortable with it. You can rely on it. Variety is fun. Variety keeps you engaged. It's a great way to kind of add a little bit of flavor to your exercise, but it's not practical. I mean, you can't always just switch up what you're doing and expect to make progress. I've talked about stable versus unstable exercises. You know, when it comes to strength training, again, we talked about being intentional. When it comes to strength training, we want stable exercises. We don't want to have to worry about not falling over or keeping our balance. We just want to be able to create the force that is required to move that weight and then over time try to lift more. So save the unstable exercises for your other forms of exercise, or maybe it's in the later half of your program when you're working more on balance and being dynamic and stability. What also matters is rest in between your sets. This is not cardio, right? We go back to what strength training is. We don't really care about getting our heart rate up. We want to be able to restore the energy that we use to lift that heavy weight so that we can do it again. We want to be able to do it appropriately. We want to be able to do it with the right intention and the right intensity and the right execution. And we can't do that if we're tired. So it kind of rides that quality over quantity mindset. What matters is structure. You'd be surprised how many people fail to have structure in their strength training plan, and then they don't make progress because they're doing random stuff. They're not tracking their weights. They're not following a plan. So following a plan, first off, is kind of the big one. And then record your weights and your reps so that you know what combination of weight and reps gives you that type of intensity, so that when you go to repeat that exercise in 2 weeks, you know what you're shooting for. And then slowly progress. Slowly progress the amount of sets that you do at that certain intensity. Slowly progress the weight. Understand that there is this diversity when it comes to progress. You might do the same reps of the same weight, but you moved it cleaner. You executed it better. So those are the things that matter when it comes to strength training. What doesn't matter? Burning calories, right? We don't care about the overall caloric burn with our strength training because that's not the focus. You know, maybe you have another form of exercise where you're trying to burn calories, and that's totally okay. But when it comes to strength training, we're trying to take our muscles close to that fatigue, to that failure, and we're trying to overload that type of intensity over the course of time. Soreness doesn't matter. It's not reliable. Think if you went out and you ran a half marathon tomorrow, you probably would wake up sore the next day. And does that mean that you gain muscle and you gain strength? You could have a really productive session. You could do great. You had a PR and you woke up and you weren't sore the next day. And vice versa. You could have a pretty just yucky session where you're going through the motions and you wake up and you are sore. It's just not a reliable way to track and measure your progress. And if you use it, then you're always just chasing soreness. And I think you could kind of feel that that would not be a healthy thing to do. Same thing with feeling the pump or the burn. These are all just symptoms. They're just symptoms of exercise. You don't want to chase the pump or the burn because, again, that doesn't follow the principles of strength training, which is creating the right intensity and following progressive overload over time. I'm sure you've picked up light weights and you've done 25 reps, but you could have kept going. You had more left in the tank. So again, those are not things that we want to focus our energy on when it comes. And again, that intention is what allows you to take the next step. Same thing with exercise difficulty and doing more. Something being difficult does not necessarily mean it's better for you. A single leg squat does not necessarily mean it's better than a double leg squat, even though it's more difficult. There's a time and a place for it. You want to focus on increasing your single leg stability and your knee strength and having fun and challenging yourself with an exercise like that. That's totally fine. But again, under the realm of strength training and under that microscope, we do not care about how difficult the exercise is. We can make an exercise more difficult by lifting more weight, or by taking ourselves closer to failure or fatigue, and then doing more. Again, this is something that I've taken a huge step on in my personal fitness journey and working with my coaching clients, is that like doing more isn't always better. We don't want to get into the habit of just checking boxes so that we can exhaust ourselves and feel good about ourselves. I would much rather you do 3 exercises with really good purpose and intention, and you tracked your weight and you got close to fatigue and it was really productive, than you did 8 exercises of 3 sets of 10 and you kind of just went through the motions. So again, go back to the principle of specificity. Go back to what strength training is as a specific method of exercise. And then try to implement that into your training. Again, allow yourself to take time to identify what exercise you're doing, get better at the skill, being able to execute them. And then identify the intensity at which you work at on a certain exercise. And then over time, try to progress that with more overload. And you will see yourself get stronger, and you will reap the many benefits of strength training. If you have any questions, please let me know. If this inspires you to work deeper into your strength training, please let me know. And as always, flow together, flow to get there.